A modern skyscraper does not belong in ancient Rome, yet scattered across our world are real structures that feel just as out of place, monuments that defy the technological timeline of their own eras. These are history's great anomalies, stone and metal puzzles that whisper of lost knowledge or impossible skill. By the end of this journey, you will have explored 25 of the most baffling architectural mysteries ever discovered, each one a challenge to the story we think we know. How did a civilization without the wheel move stones heavier than locomotives? And why does a 2,000-year-old device contain gears more sophisticated than a medieval clock? What does it say about our past when the evidence itself seems to break all the rules? Our journey begins with a structure so familiar its mystery is often overlooked. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not merely old, it is unnervingly perfect. This monument, built over 4,500 years ago, achieves a level of precision that would be a serious challenge for modern engineers, even with satellites and laser guidance. The base of the pyramid is a near-perfect square, with sides aligned almost exactly to the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west. Its alignment to true north is off by a mere 3/60ths of a single degree. To put that into perspective, the builders accomplished this without a magnetic compass, which would point to magnetic north, a constantly shifting point, not true north. They did it by observing the stars, a feat of astronomical observation that seems almost superhuman in its accuracy. Then there are the numbers hidden in plain sight. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is very close to 2 pi, the mathematical constant. The dimensions themselves seem to mirror the circumference of the Earth. If you take the pyramid's height and multiply it by 43,200, you get a number strikingly close to the polar radius of our planet. Now, were these intentional mathematical messages from the ancient architects, or are they incredible coincidences born from a chosen unit of measurement? Scholars fiercely debate this, but the coincidence, if it is one, is staggeringly precise. But the greatest shock is in the physical labor. The pyramid is composed of around 2.5 million individual stone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. Some of the granite slabs in the inner chambers weigh over 60 tons. These stones were quarried from miles away, transported across the desert, and then lifted and fitted together with joints so tight you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. We have no records, no engineering blueprints, and no clear explanation for the tools or ramps that could achieve this. The common theory of long, straight ramps would require more construction material than the pyramid itself. The logistical coordination, the management of a massive workforce, the sustenance and housing for thousands of workers, all of it points to a civilization with organizational skills that rival our own. This forces a haunting question. What if the standard image of Bronze Age builders with copper chisels and ropes is incomplete? The perfection of the Great Pyramid suggests a lost chapter in human technological development, a sophisticated school of engineering and astronomy that vanished, leaving only its grandest project as a silent stone question mark. It stands not as a tomb of a king, but as a monument to a mystery, the first and perhaps greatest structure on our list that simply does not match its era. Yet the pyramid's greatest secrets may be locked within its own walls. Venturing inside reveals engineering puzzles that make the exterior seem almost simple. Take the narrow shafts, often called air shafts, that extend from the king's and queen's chambers deep within the monument. For a long time, their purpose was a complete mystery. They are far too small for a person to crawl through, and they do not actually reach the outside air. Modern robotic explorations have revealed something astonishing. These shafts are not random ventilation ducts. They are precisely aligned with specific stars in the night sky as they appeared over 4,500 years ago. One shaft from the king's chamber points directly toward the constellation Orion, associated with the god Osiris. another aligns with the North Star of that era, Thuban. This suggests the ancient Egyptians possessed a profound and exact understanding of celestial mechanics, mapping the heavens with such precision they could embed star coordinates into solid stone hundreds of feet thick. This is architecture as astronomy, a permanent observatory built into a mountain of stone. Then there is the staggering Grand Gallery, a long, ascending corridor that leads to the king's chamber. Walking through it is an experience that defies its age. The walls rise over 28 feet in a majestic, corbelled vault, where each layer of stone projects slightly over the one below. This is not a simple tunnel. It is a masterpiece of structural engineering designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid above it. The precision of the angles, the smoothness of the limestone walls, and the complexity of the design speak of a knowledge of load-bearing mechanics that feels centuries ahead of its time. How did they calculate these stresses without modern mathematics? How did they execute it with such flawless symmetry? But the most intimate and puzzling artifact waits in the king's chamber itself, the granite coffer, often called the sarcophagus. This massive box, carved from a single block of extremely hard granite, presents a problem that has troubled stonemasons and engineers for generations. Its exterior dimensions are larger than the narrow entrance to the chamber, meaning it had to be placed inside during construction, a logistical headache in itself. The real shock, however, is in the finish. The surfaces are smooth and flat to a degree that seems impossible for the presumed tools of the age, simple copper saws and abrasive sand. The corners are perfectly square, and the inside is hollowed out with corners that are also sharply square. Some researchers have pointed to fine, parallel markings on the stone that resemble the feed lines left by a modern saw blade using a harder material, like diamonds or some lost abrasive technology. The coffer's lid is missing, and the box itself shows no signs of ever having held a mummy. So what was its true purpose? Was it a symbolic vessel, or does its impossible craftsmanship hint at a method of stoneworking we have yet to rediscover? This single object, sitting in the heart of the world's most famous ancient wonder, quietly challenges our entire narrative of technological progress, suggesting that the pyramid builders might have possessed secrets we are only beginning to question. But if the Great Pyramid represents a mystery of scale and alignment, the ruins of Puma Punku in Bolivia present a puzzle of a completely different nature. Here you will not find towering monuments or intact chambers. Instead, the scene resembles a modern industrial yard struck by a catastrophic earthquake. The ground is littered with hundreds of massive stone blocks, all shattered and scattered as if by a giant's furious hand. These are not rough-hewn boulders. Each piece is a geometric masterpiece, cut with a precision so sharp, so clean, it looks machined. The stones are made of andesite and granite, some of the hardest materials on Earth, yet they feature surfaces as smooth as glass, edges perfectly straight, and corners with a crisp 90-degree sharpness that defies the tools we believe were available to its pre-Incan builders over 1,000 years ago. The most iconic pieces are the so-called H-blocks, massive stone slabs with a distinctive H shape carved directly into them. These are not decorative symbols, they are complex architectural components. Each one has a series of identical, perfectly spaced notches and protrusions, and some feature intricate, shallow channels carved into their faces with a uniform depth and width that runs dead straight for its entire length. The purpose of these channels remains unknown, but their precision is undeniable. They look less like chisel marks and more like the grooves cut by a modern milling machine. Even more baffling is the design logic of these blocks. They appear to be modular, like giant stone Lego bricks, engineered to interlock with one another using a system of complex joints. This suggests a concept of prefabrication, where stones were cut to exact specifications at a distant quarry and then transported to the site for assembly, snapping together without the need for mortar. The implication is staggering. It points to a standardized unit of measurement, advanced drafting knowledge, and a level of stone-working technology that should not exist in its era. How do you achieve such flawless flatness on granite without powered tools? How do you drill perfectly circular holes or create those ruler-straight channels in stone that would quickly dull copper or bronze? The sheer hardness of the materials used at Puma Punku makes the mystery even deeper, whispering of a lost method, a forgotten tool, or a knowledge of materials that turned stone into something as workable as clay. The stones of Puma Punku are not just mysterious, they are a direct challenge to our understanding of ancient capability. The precision here is not about grand alignment with the stars, but about micro-engineering, a level of detail that feels industrial. Look closely at any one of these shattered blocks and you will find features that should not exist. The surfaces are not merely flat, they are planar, as if run through a giant slab mill. The corners are not approximately square, they are perfect 90-degree angles, sharper than what you would find in most modern brickwork. This geometric perfection is repeated across hundreds of broken pieces, suggesting it was not a fluke of a single master craftsman, but a standardized technique, a common language of construction that has been completely lost. Then there are the drill holes. Scattered across these hard granite and andesite slabs are perfectly cylindrical bores, some with a consistent diameter that runs straight through the stone. Drilling into such hard material with primitive tools typically leaves a conical or irregular hole, as a handheld drill bit wobbles and wears down. The holes at Puma Punku are uniform, as if made by a steady, powered drill press. Even more telling are the famous I-beam recesses, those intricate channels carved into the faces of the stones. These are not rough gouges. They are precise, shallow trenches with parallel sides and a flat bottom, maintaining an exact depth and width along their entire length. They look exactly like the tracks a modern machining tool would leave behind. This level of workmanship forces a difficult question. What kind of technology could have achieved this over 1,000 years ago? The conventional explanation of stone hammers, copper chisels, and patient abrasion with sand seems utterly inadequate against andesite, a stone nearly as hard as diamond. This has led to a fierce and ongoing controversy. Some researchers and stonemasons argue that the only way to explain such crisp, clean work on such hard stone is with tools tipped with something harder than the stone itself. Could the builders have used diamond-tipped drills or saws? We know diamonds were known and valued in the ancient world, though typically as ornaments. The concept of embedding diamond fragments into a cutting edge is a sophisticated leap, but not an impossible one. Others propose a lost method of thermal or chemical softening, perhaps using a plant-based compound that could temporarily alter the stone's surface hardness, allowing it to be worked before reverting to its original strength. There is no archaeological evidence for such a process, but the evidence of the stones themselves is hard to ignore. Modern master stonemasons, equipped with diamond-bladed saws and computer-guided machines, acknowledge that replicating the precision of Puma Punku would be a significant technical challenge, requiring careful planning and advanced equipment. The fact that an ancient culture appears to have done it repeatedly on a massive scale with blocks weighing many tons suggests we are missing a fundamental chapter in the story of technology. This is not about aliens or lost super-civilizations in the fantastical sense, but about the sobering possibility that human ingenuity in the past discovered and then forgot techniques that we, in our arrogance, assume are solely the products of our modern industrial age. Puma Punku stands as a field of broken clues, each stone a silent testament to a method we can see the results of but cannot fully explain. A ghost of a technology that haunts the high plains of Bolivia. The ghost of a lost technology haunts not only stone but also metal. While Puma Punku's secrets are etched in shattered granite, another discovery reveals a sophistication so advanced it was literally invisible for centuries. This is the story of the Antikythera mechanism. In the year 1900, sponge divers off the coast of a Greek island called Antikythera stumbled upon the wreck of an ancient Roman cargo ship. Among the statues and amphorae, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood about the size of a large book. It was so encrusted and decayed that for decades it sat in a museum drawer, catalogued as a curious but unremarkable piece of nautical debris. It looked for all the world like a rock. Then, in the 1950s, a scientist took an X-ray of the object. The image revealed not a solid mass, but a stunning, intricate clockwork frozen in time. Inside that corroded shell was a complex system of at least 30 precise bronze gears, interlocking with a complexity that would not be seen again until the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. This was not a statue or a weapon, it was a machine, a computer made of gears crafted in the 2nd or 1st century before the Common Era. The purpose of this device was nothing short of breathtaking. The Antikythera mechanism was an analog computer designed to model the cosmos. By turning a hand crank on the side, an operator could advance a series of dials and pointers on the front and back faces. These dials tracked the movements of the sun and the moon through the zodiac, predicted lunar and solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, and even showed the positions of the 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. It accounted for their irregular retrograde motions, a complex astronomical phenomenon that requires precise gearing to simulate, but it was more than a planetarium. One of its dials tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. Another likely displayed the dates of important agricultural and religious festivals. This was a single device that unified timekeeping, astronomy, and social calendar into one portable mechanical masterpiece. Consider what this means for the timeline of technology. We have always imagined ancient genius in terms of philosophy, architecture, and art. The Antikythera mechanism forces us to add precision mechanical engineering to that list. The gears inside are not simple. They include differential gears, a component essential in modern car axles, which allows 2 wheels to rotate at different speeds. This technology was thought to have been invented in the 16th century. The teeth on the gears are tiny, triangular, and precisely cut, requiring a level of miniature metalworking and mathematical planning that seems to belong to a different era entirely. Who built it? The leading theory points to the school of thought connected to the great mathematician Archimedes, though the device was found on a Roman ship. Its inscriptions are in Greek. It represents a peak of Hellenistic scientific knowledge that was almost completely lost in the subsequent centuries of war and cultural collapse. The device is a solitary survivor, a single data point suggesting an entire tradition of geared technology that vanished from the historical record. It whispers of workshops where craftsmen and astronomers collaborated, of scrolls filled with gear ratio calculations, of a path of technological development that was interrupted and forgotten. When we look at the Antikythera mechanism, we are not just looking at a clever artifact. We are looking at a ghost of a potential future that the ancient world glimpsed, built, and then somehow lost, leaving this one corroded clue at the bottom of the sea to question our assumptions about progress itself. The precision of the Antikythera mechanism was hidden within a corroded shell, but some ancient engineering declares its impossibility in plain sight, carved into the very bones of a mountain. High above the city of Cusco, Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman presents a wall that stops you cold. It is not a wall in a simple sense. It is a serpentine, zigzagging rampart built from stones so colossal, so bizarrely shaped, and so perfectly joined that the mind refuses to accept its age. The Incas built here in the 15th century, but the foundation, the most awe-inspiring part, feels like it belongs to a far older and more technologically advanced epoch. The stones are limestone blocks, but to call them blocks is misleading. They are megalithic puzzles, each one a unique, irregular polygon weighing dozens, even over 100 tons. They look like giant, worn teeth jammed together in a three-dimensional jigsaw that stretches for hundreds of feet. The sheer mass is staggering, but it is the joining that defies belief. These mammoth stones are fitted together with joints of such insane precision that for centuries the local saying has held true: not even a razor blade can slide between them. There is no mortar. The entire wall relies on the flawless contact between one irregular surface and another. This is polygonal masonry at its most extreme and mysterious. Each stone was individually carved to match the unique, contoured shape of its neighbors, with faces that curve, angles that meet at more than 90 degrees, and interlocking lobes that seem to weave the wall into a single, immutable mass. The process is incomprehensible. How do you shape a 100-ton stone with such exactitude, using only stone hammers and bronze tools? How do you trial fit it? You cannot simply hoist it up, find a gap, and trim a little off the side. The fitting had to be perfect on the first attempt. The most logical explanation suggests a method of working the stones in place, slowly, painstakingly abutting one against the other, and grinding them together with sand and water until the surfaces mirrored each other perfectly. Yet, the scale and the number of stones make this theory feel almost as miraculous as the wall itself. The Incas were master stonemasons, yes, but the foundational tier of Sacsayhuaman seems to represent a zenith of that craft that appears suddenly, without clear evolution from simpler styles. This has fueled a persistent alternative theory that the Incas built upon a far older, pre-existing Cyclopean wall constructed by a culture lost to time, a culture that possessed a secret method of softening and molding stone like clay. Whether it was Inca genius or inherited knowledge, the result is a structure that does not just withstand earthquakes, it absorbs them. The irregular, interlocking joints allow the wall to flex and settle during tremors without collapsing, a sophisticated seismic engineering principle embodied in stone. To stand before it is to feel a deep, unsettling awe. You are looking at a feat that modern engineers with computer modeling and diamond saws would struggle to replicate. It is a permanent testament to a skill so advanced it borders on the magical, leaving us to wonder if we have truly understood the limits of the tools and minds that shaped the ancient Andes. The walls of Sacsayhuaman show a mastery of stone, but another ancient culture may have left clues of a mastery over something far more elusive: electricity itself. Deep within the Hathor Temple at Dendera, Egypt, a relief carved into a dark sandstone wall has sparked one of the most heated debates in alternative archaeology. The carving is unmistakably strange. It shows two large, bulb-like objects, each held aloft by a pillar. Inside each bulb, you can see a snake stretching its body along the length of the interior, its head pointed toward one end. This snake is held in place by what looks like a supporting arm. The bulb itself sits in what appears to be a socket shaped like a lotus flower. Leading away from the base is a thick, cable-like line that connects to a box which is being gripped by a kneeling priest-like figure. Next to this scene stands a baboon holding two knives, adding to the surreal, almost technological feel of the entire tableau. To a modern eye, the interpretation seems startlingly obvious. It looks for all the world like a diagram of an electric light bulb. The bulb is the glass enclosure, the snake is the filament, the lotus is the socket, the cable is the wiring, and the box is a power source or battery with the priest as the operator. The baboon with knives is often linked to the god Thoth, a deity of knowledge which some argue symbolizes the danger or sacred power of this technology. This is the heart of the so-called Dendera light hypothesis, the idea that ancient Egyptians possessed and used some form of electrical illumination, perhaps explaining how they painted and carved deep inside tombs and temples where no soot from torches has ever been found. Proponents point to other curiosities, like the absence of smoke stains in many pyramids and the incredible precision of artwork in pitch-black chambers, as circumstantial evidence that they had a cleaner light source. The carving at Dendera, they argue, is a literal instruction manual, a depiction of a real device preserved in stone for millennia. Mainstream Egyptology, however, offers a completely different and well-documented interpretation. Scholars explain that the relief is not a technical diagram, but a rich mythological scene. In this view, the bulb is actually a representation of a lotus flower from which a snake, a symbol of the god Harsomptus, is emerging. This is a classic creation myth, showing the serpentine deity being born from the primordial waters, represented by the lotus. The Jed pillar, the so-called cable, is a symbol of stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. The box is a shrine, and the figure is not a priest but the god Her, holding the lotus stem as a symbol of millions of years. The entire tableau is a symbolic story of divine birth and cosmic order, not an electrical schematic. The context of the temple supports this, as every other wall is covered in similar symbolic narratives of gods, goddesses, and ritual. So who is right? The debate captures the essential tension of these out-of-place artifacts. Is our modern mind steeped in technology, projecting its own image onto an ancient symbol, forcing a familiar shape onto an alien thought process? Or does the sheer visual coincidence point to a lost thread of practical knowledge, a forgotten experiment with primitive electrical phenomena like the Baghdad battery that was then encoded into religious symbolism? The Dendera relief does not provide a clear answer. It provides a Rorschach test. You can see a sacred myth, or you can see a light bulb. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility lies not in choosing one over the other, but in considering a middle path. Could the ancient Egyptians, brilliant observers of the natural world, have witnessed electrical phenomena like St. Elmo's fire or electric eels and sought to represent that mysterious, divine power in their art? The carving remains a silent stone question mark glowing in the dark of the temple, challenging us to wonder if the line between advanced technology and sacred magic was ever truly distinct in the ancient world. The line between sacred symbol and technological artifact blurs in the ancient world, but some relics carry their mystery not in cryptic carvings, but in their astonishing, enduring material. In the heart of Delhi, India, stands a silent sentinel that defies one of nature's most relentless forces. It is the Iron Pillar, a solid shaft of wrought iron soaring 7 meters or 23 feet into the sky and weighing over 6 tons. What makes this pillar, erected around the year 400, truly miraculous is not its size but its skin. In a region with punishing humidity and monsoon rains, this 1,600-year-old iron monument shows almost no sign of rust. It stands clean and dark while modern iron fences nearby corrode and flake away in mere decades. This is not a matter of good luck, it is a metallurgical mystery forged into the metal itself. Modern scientific analysis has revealed the pillar's secret, a secret its creators may not have fully understood. The iron is of exceptional purity with a very low carbon content, but its most crucial characteristic is an unusually high amount of phosphorus. This phosphorus, combined with the particular forging technique used, allowed the pillar to develop an incredibly thin protective film on its surface, a process modern engineers call passivation. This film, just a few hundred atoms thick, is a stable, non-porous layer of iron-hydrogen phosphate hydrate. It forms a perfect barrier, shielding the raw metal beneath from oxygen and moisture, the very elements that cause rust. The process is so effective that if you scratch the surface, this protective layer can actually reform under the right conditions, healing its own wound. The staggering implication is that ancient Indian ironsmiths, over a millennium and a half ago, achieved a feat of material science that the modern world only began to comprehend in the 20th century. We did not fully understand the chemistry of passivation until the last 100 years. So how did they do it? Was this a deliberate innovation, a product of meticulous experimentation passed down through generations of master metalworkers? The consistent quality of the iron suggests a controlled, sophisticated process. The iron was likely produced in a series of small furnaces where the high phosphorus came from the specific ore or the charcoal fuel used. The smiths would have repeatedly heated and hammered the metal, folding and welding it to create a uniform bloom, a process that would have evenly distributed the phosphorus and helped create the conditions for that protective film to form. They may have observed that iron produced in this particular way lasted longer and deliberately replicated the method without knowing the precise chemical reason why. This points to a profound empirical knowledge, a science born from observation and result rather than theoretical chemistry. On the other hand, could it have been a magnificent accident? Perhaps the unique combination of local ore, fuel, and forging technique produced this one-of-a-kind resistant metal by chance. The builders, impressed by its durability, used it for this grand commemorative pillar without ever being able to reproduce the effect consistently. The fact that we do not find many other large artifacts from the same period with identical properties lends some weight to the accident theory. Yet, the pillar itself stands as a testament to a possibility. It forces us to ask whether ancient artisans, through generations of hands-on work, developed an intuitive, material-based wisdom that we, with our laboratories and formulas, are only now learning to decode. The iron pillar does not whisper of lost electrical grids or impossible machinery. It speaks to a quieter, more profound mastery, the ability to convince one of the most reactive metals on Earth to simply hold still, to resist the flow of time itself for 16 centuries and counting. It is a monument not just to a king, but to a forgotten science of materials, waiting patiently in plain sight for the modern world to finally understand its language. A mastery of materials is one thing, but a mastery of society is another. Far earlier than the Iron Pillar or the pyramids on a windswept hill in southeastern Turkey, a discovery was made that did not just challenge history, it shattered the foundational story of human civilization itself. This is Göbekli Tepe. To walk among its circles is to step into a world that should not exist. The site consists of multiple enclosures, each one a ring of massive, T-shaped limestone pillars, many standing over 16 feet tall and weighing more than 10 tons. They are arranged with clear intention, some circles surrounding two even larger central pillars. The stone is adorned not with simple scratches, but with an elaborate bestiary of deep, precise relief carvings. Foxes, cranes, scorpions, lions, and boars, all rendered with a flowing, artistic sophistication that feels alive. The date of this place is what stops the breath. These pillars were carved, erected, and arranged around 9,600 years before the Common Era. That is 11,600 years ago. To grasp that scale, this temple complex is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It was built a staggering 6,000 years before the first pharaoh ruled Egypt. Most astonishingly, it predates the invention of agriculture. According to everything we thought we knew, the people who built Göbekli Tepe should have been simple bands of hunter-gatherers, nomadic, living hand-to-mouth, with no time for grand projects, no need for permanent monuments, and no social structure capable of organizing such a feat. Göbekli Tepe proves that story is backwards. Here, hunter-gatherers without farms, without domesticated animals, without permanent villages, somehow quarried these multi-ton pillars from local bedrock, transported them hundreds of feet, carved them with intricate art, and erected them in precise geometric patterns. The logistics are mind-bending. It would have required a large, coordinated workforce, people who needed to be fed and housed for an extended period. This implies a level of social organization, a hierarchy of planners and laborers, and a shared, compelling belief system powerful enough to motivate such a staggering communal effort, all attributes we reserved for later agricultural societies. The carvings themselves offer a clue. They are almost entirely of wild, dangerous, and powerful animals, not the docile, domesticated creatures that would come millennia later. This was a world still deeply entwined with the hunt, a world where the spiritual realm was populated by the beasts of the wilderness. The temple, then, may have been a ritual center for these scattered groups, a sacred gathering place that bound them together seasonally. This turns the standard narrative of human progress completely on its head. We always believed that agriculture came first, providing the food surplus that allowed people to settle down, which then led to specialization, social hierarchy, and finally, the spare time and resources to build monuments. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite may be true. Perhaps it was the need to build and maintain such a sacred site that forced hunter-gatherers to organize, to coordinate, to settle nearby, and to find new ways to feed large gatherings. In other words, the temple may have invented the society, not the other way around. It was the spark, not the consequence. This single site, with its silent, towering pillars covered in ancient beasts, forces a humbling revision. The drive to create meaning, to build something greater than ourselves, to carve our beliefs into the very bones of the earth, this may be the original engine of human civilization. An impulse so powerful it could move mountains of stone long before we ever thought to plant a seed. Göbekli Tepe redefined the dawn of civilization, but a later culture would push the limits of stone to a scale that seems almost supernatural. In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, the ruins of the Roman temple complex at Baalbek hold a secret in plain sight. The grand columns and ornate carvings are impressive, but they are merely a decorative skin over a far older, more baffling foundation. Beneath the Roman floor level lies a platform built from the largest cut stones ever used in human construction. This is the trilithon, a wall composed of 3 perfectly fitted limestone blocks. Each one is a monolith measuring roughly 64 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet deep. Their weight is almost incomprehensible, approximately 800 tons each. To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent of 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 jetliners. And these are not lying on the ground. They are lifted and set into place, forming a course in the wall about 20 feet above the foundation. They fit together with joints so precise that, like saxahuamon, you cannot force a knife blade between them. The Romans are credited with building the temple atop this platform, but the origin of the trilithon itself is a deep historical mystery. The engineering challenges it presents are so extreme they cast doubt on whether Roman technology, advanced as it was, could have been responsible. The Romans used cranes, but their largest known crane, the Polyspastos, could likely lift no more than about 60 tons. Even their most powerful machines, worked by massive human treadwheels, fall orders of magnitude short of moving an 800-ton block. The logistics are staggering. These stones were quarried from a site over half a mile away. How do you transport a solid block of limestone weighing as much as a small warship across uneven terrain? The conventional theory for moving megaliths involves sledges, rollers, and vast teams of men or oxen. But the friction and ground pressure of an 800-ton load would crush any wooden rollers into splinters and turn even damp earth into a muddy rut, making movement impossible. Some have proposed a system of pivoting and levering on a prepared road, a process of agonizing slowness that would require the coordination of thousands of workers for months, if not years, for a single stone. And then comes the even greater puzzle, the lifting. How do you raise this colossus 20 feet into the air and then slide it laterally into a perfect position next to its neighbor? Roman engineers were masters of the ramp, but a ramp capable of supporting such a weight would be a monumental construction project in itself, requiring more material than the stone it was meant to lift. The precision of the final placement is the final, silent argument against simple brute force. You cannot nudge an 800-ton block into micro-adjustments. Its placement had to be perfect from the moment it was set down. Yet the trilithon is not even the full story of Baalbek's mystery. In the ancient quarry, less than a mile from the temple, lies an even more mind-boggling artifact. It is called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single, partially detached block of limestone still sitting in its bedrock cradle. This stone makes the trilithon blocks look almost manageable. It is estimated to weigh over 1,000 tons, making it the largest known single piece of stone ever cut by human hands. It was clearly intended to be used as its base has been undercut and it is shaped on 3 sides, but for reasons lost to time, it was never moved. Its very existence deepens the enigma. It proves the builders were not only capable of quarrying blocks of this unimaginable scale, they were planning to use them. The tool marks on its surface are another clue, showing the same clean, precise cutting seen at other megalithic sites, but on a scale that dwarfs them all. So who built the platform of Baalbek and how? Some archaeologists insist it is a late Roman or early Byzantine achievement, a pinnacle of imperial engineering whose methods we have simply underestimated. Others look at the stylistic difference between the rough, cyclopean platform and the refined Roman temple above it and argue for a much older, pre-Roman origin. Could it be the work of a forgotten Bronze Age civilization, or perhaps an even earlier culture like the builders of Göbekli Tepe's descendants, who possessed a lost method of megalithic construction that later peoples simply built upon? The stones themselves offer no inscription, no blueprint. They simply sit, a trio of giants holding up history, with a 4th giant waiting forever in the quarry, a silent question carved in 1,000 tons of stone. How do you build with mountains? At Baalbek, it seems someone once knew, and that knowledge has vanished, leaving only the impossible proof. The quarry at Baalbek is a museum of the impossible. Here lies the stone of the pregnant woman, a behemoth that makes the trilithon block seem almost reasonable. But to simply call it a big rock is to miss the terrifying precision of its abandonment. Look at how it was freed from the bedrock. The stonecutters did not just hack it out, they carved a deep, clean trench around it with walls that are vertical and smooth. More astonishing is the stone's underside. It was undercut, meaning the workers carved away the limestone beneath it, leaving a gap so the block sits on a slender pedestal of untouched rock, ready to be separated. This undercut surface is not rough or jagged. It is perfectly flat, a smooth plane created in the dark, cramped space beneath 1,000 tons of impending weight. How do you achieve such a flawless finish while lying on your back, working by flickering lamplight, with the constant dread that the entire mass could shift and crush you? The tool marks suggest a methodical, confident process, as if the craftsman had a technique that made this Herculean task routine. This precision in the quarry deepens the transportation mystery exponentially. Moving an 800-ton block half a mile seemed improbable. Moving this 1,000-ton titan would have been an endeavor of mythic proportions. The conventional explanations all strain under the weight. The roller theory is often proposed. You lay down a track of wooden logs, place the stone on a sledge and pull, but the physics collapses here. The compressive strength of wood is limited. 1,000 tons would instantly pulverize any wooden roller into splinters. Even if you used hundreds of logs in a continuous conveyor belt, the ground pressure would be so immense it would sink the entire apparatus into the soil, creating a deep trench, not a road. Then there is the lever and pivot method, where teams use levers to rock the stone forward incrementally. While plausible for smaller megaliths, the scale here is different. The force required to initiate movement, let alone sustain it for a mile, is beyond what human or animal power could provide, even with thousands of workers. The coordination would be a nightmare. A single mistimed push could cause a catastrophic shift. Some have proposed a system of water-lubricated clay tracks to reduce friction, but maintaining a level, stable pathway for such a load over uneven terrain seems an engineering project rivaling the temple itself. Each practical theory hits a wall of sheer mass. The block is not just heavy, it is at the very edge of what solid ground can support without deforming. This leads to the haunting, perennial question: could the builders have possessed a method we have not yet considered, a lost principle of physics or material science? There are fringe suggestions, from theories about sound levitation to the use of plant-based compounds that temporarily reduced friction to an almost supernatural degree. While these ideas reside outside mainstream archaeology, they persist because the standard explanations feel so insufficient. The stone of the pregnant woman, therefore, is more than an unfinished block. It is a controlled experiment that failed to leave the lab. It shows us the first, precise steps of a process we cannot complete. It proves the builders could quarry at this scale with stunning accuracy, but its eternal resting place in the quarry suggests that even for them, the final step of transportation may have been a challenge too far, or perhaps a project interrupted by time or catastrophe. This stone is the ultimate out-of-place enigma. It is a definitive piece of evidence that someone, long before the Romans, intended to build with mountains, and its silent presence asks us the most difficult question of all. If we cannot explain how they moved it, can we truly claim to understand what they were capable of? The silent giants of Baalbek are not alone in their defiance of gravity. On the most remote inhabited island on Earth, another culture performed a similar miracle of transport, but with a hauntingly different outcome. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is a speck of volcanic rock in the vast Pacific, over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. And here, the Rapa Nui people created the moai, those brooding, long-faced statues that have become icons of mystery. But the popular image is a lie. Those famous heads are not just heads, they are full-bodied statues, most buried up to their necks in the slopes of the island's quarry crater. When excavated, they reveal torsos, arms, and hands resting on their stomachs, some with intricate carvings on their backs, and their scale is staggering. The average moai stands about 13 feet tall and weighs around 14 tons. But the largest one ever partially carved, nicknamed El Gigant, still lies in the quarry unfinished. It is a colossal 70 feet long and is estimated to weigh over 250 tons. Even the successfully transported statues represent a logistical nightmare. The Rapa Nui had no metal, no wheels, and no draft animals larger than a chicken. The island's trees, which were once a lush forest, are long gone. Yet they managed to move these multi-ton monoliths from the central quarry of Rono Raraku to ceremonial platforms called ahu, scattered all around the coastline, some as far as 11 miles away. How did they do it with what appears to be so little? The mystery has spawned two main competing theories, each with passionate advocates and significant problems. The traditional theory, supported by many archaeologists, involves log rollers and sledges. The idea is that the island's now vanished palm forests provided the raw material. Workers would lower a statue onto a large wooden sledge using ropes and levers. They would then roll the sledge over a path of felled logs, pulling with ropes while teams constantly moved the rear logs to the front, creating a continuous rolling road. It is a method seen in other ancient cultures and seems mechanically sound, but the challenges are immense. The island's terrain is not flat, it is rugged with hills, valleys, and soft, uneven soil. The friction and the constant need for hundreds of fresh logs would have been an enormous drain on the island's most critical resource, its trees. This leads directly to the popular ecological collapse narrative that the Rapa Nui deforested their own island to move statues, leading to societal catastrophe. The second, more revolutionary theory suggests the statues walked, proposed by researchers Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo. This idea is based on a combination of physics, oral tradition, and experimental archaeology. They point out that the statues have a distinctive forward-leaning design with a rounded, bulbous base. This shape, they argue, is not an artistic choice but an engineering feature. By attaching ropes to the statue's head and base, teams could rock it side to side, using its own center of gravity to make it pivot forward with each swing, effectively walking it upright across the landscape. It would require far fewer people and, crucially, no logs at all. Experiments with concrete replicas have shown the method can work, with a small team moving a multi-ton statue hundreds of feet in a day. Proponents say this explains the many statues found abandoned on ancient roads toppled on their faces. They fell during transport, not during some later rebellion. Yet, critics question whether the method would work over 11 miles of rough ground without snapping the statue's slender neck. The truth may lie in a combination or in a method we have not yet conceived. Regardless of the technique, the accomplishment stands as a testament to human ingenuity and communal will. It forces us to see the Rapa Nui not as victims of ecological folly, but as brilliant engineers who solved a monumental puzzle with the materials they had. The Moai are more than stone faces. They are expressions of a people's identity, ancestors made permanent, and their journey from quarry to coast remains one of humanity's most compelling and unresolved feats of sheer determination. The determination to move mountains of stone speaks to a human drive to reshape the world on a colossal scale. But on a stark plateau in southern Peru, an ancient culture chose a different canvas entirely. The Nazca lines are not monuments you can touch or walk beside. They are drawings on the land so vast you must ascend into the sky to see them. Etched into the dark, sun-baked desert pavement are hundreds of geometric shapes, trapezoids, triangles, and spirals, alongside immense figures of animals and plants. A hummingbird with wings outstretched spans over 300 feet. A spider measures 150 feet long. A condor's wings reach nearly 400 feet from tip to tip. These are not rough sketches. The lines that form them are crisp, clean, and astonishingly straight, running for miles across the rough, rocky terrain of the Nazca Desert. This precision at such a monumental scale creates the central mystery. How did the Nazca people, who created these geoglyphs between 500 before the Common Era and 500 after, achieve such perfect proportions and alignment when the artists themselves could never have seen their own work from above? The answer lies in a combination of simple tools and staggering, patient organization. Archaeologists believe the Nazca used a remarkably low-tech method. They likely designed the figures at a small scale first. Then, using a grid system, they would have scaled up the design by driving a series of wooden stakes into the ground at key points connected by long ropes. To create a line, workers would simply remove the dark, oxidized surface stones, exposing the lighter, sandy soil beneath. The contrast creates the visible mark. The process itself is straightforward, but the execution is where the mind reels. Maintaining a perfectly straight line for over a mile across hills and gullies without the aid of modern surveying equipment like transits or lasers is a feat of practical geometry. They may have used sighting poles, aligning them by eye to keep the course true. The sheer physical endurance required is almost unimaginable. Teams of people, likely working over generations, moved countless tons of surface rock by hand, following a plan they could only perceive in fragments from ground level. They were essentially drawing by following a set of instructions, trusting that from a vantage point they could never reach, their collective effort would coalesce into the image of a whale, a monkey, or a giant flower. This raises a profound question about the Nazca worldview. Why commit such immense, sustained effort to create art that was, for them, fundamentally invisible? The leading theories point to ritual and cosmology. The lines may have been sacred pathways for ceremonial processions, with the animal figures representing constellations or deities connected to water and fertility in an extremely arid land. Some align with the points on the horizon where the sun rises or sets during solstices. The plateau itself becomes a giant astronomical calendar and a temple without walls, a communication with the gods written so large only they could read it in its entirety. The Nazca lines, therefore, are not out of place in terms of technology, but in terms of ambition and perspective. They represent a cultural leap of faith, a communal project that traded immediate gratification for a permanent celestial audience. They prove that vision is not limited by vantage point, and that human ingenuity, when guided by a powerful shared belief, can paint masterpieces on the very skin of the earth meant for the eyes of heaven. The Nazca lines were a communal prayer etched into the desert, but one man in modern Florida claimed he alone held the key to the ancient stonemason's power. In the 1920s, a frail Latvian immigrant named Ed Līdzkalnis began a solitary project that would become one of the 20th century's greatest architectural riddles. On a plot of land in Homestead, he single-handedly built the Coral Castle. This is not a metaphor. Working entirely alone, mostly at night and shrouding his site with tarps, Līdzkalnis quarried, carved, and positioned over 1,000 tons of massive oolite limestone, a form of coral rock. The results are a surreal garden of megalithic wonders. There are 25-foot-tall walls made from multi-ton blocks fitted together without mortar. There is a 9-ton stone gate, perfectly balanced, that once revolved so smoothly a child could push it open with a single finger. There are towering obelisks, a crescent moon-shaped table that aligns with the stars, and a 22-ton rocking chair that actually rocks. The sheer mass of stone he moved is comparable to the workload of the Great Pyramid builders, yet he insisted he did it all by himself, a man standing just 5 feet tall and weighing barely 100 pounds. When pressed on his methods, he gave only cryptic answers. He said he had rediscovered the secret of the pyramids. He spoke of understanding the laws of weight and leverage, and of magnetism and electricity as forces that could be harnessed to move matter. He claimed to know how the ancient Egyptians and the builders of Stonehenge had worked. His tools, discovered after his death, were pathetically primitive: simple chains, blocks, metal tripods, and old car parts. None of them explained the physics of his achievement. How does one man, without modern machinery, lift a 9-ton stone door and set its pivot point with such flawless precision that it balances for decades? The most persistent theory involves magnetism. Līdzkalnis left behind writings filled with diagrams and musings on magnetic currents and perpetual motion holders. Some researchers speculate he may have stumbled upon a method to temporarily negate or alter the gravitational pull on the stones, using electromagnetic principles in a way mainstream science does not yet recognize. Others propose he was a master of counterweight and fulcrum systems, using his simple tripods and chains to create a mechanical advantage so efficient it turned his slight strength into Herculean force. Yet, no one has ever successfully replicated his exact methods with the same tools and scale. The Coral Castle stands not as a ruin of a lost age, but as a fresh, tangible mystery from our own recent past. It is a personal monument built by a man who looked at the ancient megaliths and believed their secret was not lost, merely forgotten, waiting to be uncovered by anyone who could see the world through the right lens. His life's work is a direct challenge, a statement that the boundaries of human capability are not where we think they are, and that the greatest structures out of time might still be under construction, one enigmatic stone at a time. Ed Līdzkalnis' solitary struggle with stone was a modern echo of an ancient impulse, the drive to carve safety from a hostile world. But in the rocky heart of Turkey's Cappadocia region, an entire civilization took that impulse to a breathtaking extreme, not by building up, but by digging down, creating a hidden world of staggering complexity. This is Derinkuyu, an underground city that descends over 200 feet into the soft volcanic rock, a labyrinth of tunnels, rooms, and passages that could shelter an estimated 20,000 people for months on end. To call it a cave is a profound understatement. It is a meticulously engineered metropolis built in reverse, a feat of subterranean urban planning that feels less like an ancient refuge and more like the blueprint for a post-apocalyptic future. Its construction is dated to at least the Byzantine era, with some parts possibly much older, but its sophistication suggests a project that evolved over centuries, each generation expanding the depth and complexity of this stone sanctuary. Walking through its restored upper levels today, you are immediately struck by the sheer scale of the excavation. The city is not a single cavern, but a vertical hive of 18 discovered levels, though many more may remain blocked or collapsed. Each level served a distinct purpose, a clear sign of advanced logistical planning. There were living quarters, kitchens with carved-out hearths and chimneys that cleverly vented smoke away, stables for livestock, wine and oil presses, storage rooms, and even communal spaces that functioned as churches and schools. This was not a temporary bolt hole, it was a self-contained civilization designed for long-term survival. The engineering solutions are what truly defy its age. The most critical challenge in such a deep, crowded space is air. Without a constant supply of fresh air, the inhabitants would suffocate in days. The builders of Derinkuyu solved this with over 50 ventilation shafts, some stretching all the way from the deepest chambers to the surface over 200 feet above. These were not simple holes, they were carefully engineered ducts that utilized the natural convection of air, drawing fresh oxygen down while expelling stale carbon dioxide, heavy air up and out. They also doubled as water wells, tapping into an underground aquifer to provide a constant, secure water source that no besieging army could poison or cut off. Then there are the doors, massive, circular slabs of stone that could seal off entire sections of the city. These rolling stone doors, some over 5 feet in diameter and weighing several tons, are a masterpiece of defensive design. They were set into carved grooves and could be rolled into place from the inside with a lever, blocking a corridor completely. A small hole in the center allowed defenders to spear any enemy trying to break through, while the sheer weight and fit of the stone made it nearly impossible to force open from the outside. Each level could be isolated, meaning if invaders breached one section, the inhabitants could retreat deeper, sealing the door behind them and forcing the attackers to repeat the exhausting process level by level. The purpose of such an elaborate refuge is clear: security in a volatile world. Cappadocia was a crossroads, frequently ravaged by invading armies from Romans to Mongols to Arab forces. For the region's early Christian communities, Derinkuyu offered a sanctuary where they could vanish from the surface, living, worshipping, and waiting out the storm in relative safety. But the scale of the labor involved is almost incomprehensible. Every cubic foot of space was carved out by hand, with simple metal tools and baskets to remove the rubble. The coordination required to plan the ventilation, water, and multi-level structure without modern surveying equipment speaks of a profound, accumulated knowledge of underground construction. Derinkuyu does not feel like a desperate last resort. It feels like a planned society, a testament to a people who looked at the chaos above and decided to invest their greatest efforts not in walls to keep others out, but in a world to keep themselves safe within. It is a monument to foresight, a city that turned the very earth into both a shield and a home, proving that sometimes the most advanced architecture is the kind you cannot see from the surface at all. Deep beneath the earth, entire societies found safety in carved stone, but on the sun-drenched surface of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, an ancient culture left behind objects that offer no such clear purpose, only a silent geometric perfection. Scattered across the landscape, as if discarded by a giant's game, are the stone spheres of Costa Rica. These are not rough boulders, they are sculptures of astonishing precision, spheres carved from hard volcanic rock like granite and gabbro, some as small as a baseball, others towering over 2 meters in diameter and weighing more than 16 tons. Their surfaces are unnervingly smooth, their curves mathematically true. In a world of angular pyramids and carved reliefs, these perfect orbs feel like artifacts from a different dimension of thought, a deliberate and mysterious choice made by the pre-Columbian peoples of the region between 300 and 1500 of the Common Era. The mystery begins with their creation. How do you shape a block of granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, into a flawless sphere using only stone tools? The process, as archaeologists have reconstructed it, is a testament to patience and a profound understanding of material. The builders likely began by selecting a large boulder and using fire to heat its surface, then quickly cooling it with water to cause fractures and weaken the outer shell. Then, with hammerstones made of an even harder material, they would have painstakingly pecked away at the rock, gradually rounding the form. The final stages involved grinding the surface with sand and water, perhaps using the sphere itself as a tool, rolling it in a bed of abrasive sand to slowly, over generations, achieve that impossible smoothness and roundness. The technique is logical, but the result borders on the miraculous. Achieving such symmetry without modern measuring devices or metal tools is a feat of hand-eye coordination and spatial reasoning that seems to belong to a much later era of precision engineering. It is the stonework equivalent of freehand drawing a perfect circle, but on a monumental, multi-ton scale. This leads to the deeper, unanswered question: why? What drove these cultures to invest such immense, generational effort into creating objects with no obvious practical function? The spheres were found in groupings, often arranged in lines, triangles, or parabolas, frequently near important dwellings or burial sites. This placement has spawned a galaxy of theories. Some researchers propose they were astronomical tools, their alignments marking solstices or equinoxes, or mapping constellations significant to their cosmology. Others see them as powerful status symbols, the larger spheres denoting the wealth and influence of a chief or clan, their impervious, eternal form representing permanence and authority. A more intriguing idea suggests they were territorial markers, their perfect, imposing shape serving as a clear and unambiguous sign of a boundary or a sacred space. Yet none of these theories fully satisfies. The arrangements were often disturbed by centuries of farming and development before proper study, leaving their original patterns a fragmented puzzle. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the spheres is what they lack: decoration. Unlike the narrative carvings of Göbekli Tepe or the animal figures of Nazca, these objects are pure abstraction. They are form for form's sake, a pursuit of geometric idealism in a natural world of chaos and irregularity. This makes them feel uniquely anachronistic. In the timeline of art and symbolism, such pure, non-representational sculpture is a modern concept. It is as if these ancient artisans were exploring an idea that would not fully captivate the human imagination again until the 20th century. The idea that beauty and meaning could reside in perfect shape alone. The spheres do not tell us a story of gods or harvests. They whisper of a fascination with perfection itself, a desire to impose an ideal, mathematical order upon the rough material of the world. They sit silent and enigmatic, not as tools or tombs, but as philosophical statements carved in granite, challenging us to understand why a culture would look at a mountain and see, within it, the shape of a perfect sphere waiting to be set free. Perfection carved in stone is one kind of mystery, but what of a mystery penned in ink? In a vault at Yale University lies a book that should not exist. It is the Voynich manuscript, a 240-page codex written entirely in an unknown script, an alphabet of looping, fluid characters that correspond to no language ever documented on Earth. The vellum pages have been carbon-dated to the early 15th century, placing it firmly in medieval Europe, yet its contents are a hallucinatory journey through a world that feels utterly alien to that time and place. The text, written left to right in a confident, flowing hand, is undeciphered. Not a single word, not a solitary sentence has ever been convincingly translated. It is a wall of symbols that has resisted over a century of assault by the world's greatest cryptographers, including code breakers from both world wars who cracked enemy ciphers, only to be utterly baffled by this book. But the writing is only half the puzzle. The manuscript is lavishly illustrated with paintings in green, brown, and blue, and these images deepen the strangeness. One section is filled with drawings of plants that are botanically impossible, with leaves, roots, and flowers that belong to no known species, as if the artist was depicting flora from another world or a deeply symbolic herbal. Another section contains intricate astronomical and astrological diagrams, showing circular charts with suns, moons, and stars in unfamiliar constellations. There are networks of pipes and vessels that look like biological or alchemical diagrams, and perhaps most curiously, a long sequence showing dozens of nude women, often oddly proportioned, bathing in or connected by a system of green, interlocking tubes and pools. This is not the typical medieval manuscript. Where are the biblical scenes, the classical philosophers, the known medicinal herbs? This book feels like a glimpse into a parallel intellectual universe, a system of knowledge completely divorced from the scholastic traditions of its day. The theories about its origin are as wild as its illustrations. Was it an elaborate, invented language, a constructed cipher meant to conceal alchemical or heretical secrets from the church? Could it be a sophisticated hoax, a meaningless but beautiful fabrication meant to fetch a high price from a gullible Renaissance patron? Some have suggested it records a lost language, perhaps a Near Eastern or Central Asian tongue, transcribed by a traveler into this unique script. Others, noting the strange plausibility of some plant forms, propose it represents a highly stylized and coded form of early botanical science. Yet, statistical analysis of the text reveals patterns found in natural language, like word entropy and syllable structure, suggesting it is not random gibberish. It behaves like a real language, but one we cannot hear or comprehend. This is what makes the Voynich manuscript a structural mystery of information. It is not a building out of time, but a thought out of time. Its very existence suggests that in the heart of medieval Europe, someone or some group was thinking in a visual and linguistic vocabulary so radically different, so utterly isolated from the mainstream of knowledge, that it has become an island in history, untranslatable and alone. It stands as a permanent reminder that the past may hold minds whose logic and perception we can no longer follow, their entire worldview locked inside a book we can see but cannot read. A book of unreadable secrets is one thing, but a tool from a hardware store found sealed inside stone millions of years old is a challenge of a more physical kind. In the small town of London, Texas, in 1936, a couple walking along a creek bed made a bizarre discovery. Partially embedded in a rocky outcrop, they found what appeared to be an ordinary hammer. They broke the stone open to retrieve it. The object inside was indeed a hammer with a wooden handle and an iron head, but it was completely encased in the rock, as if the stone had formed around it. The rock was identified as Cretaceous sandstone, dating from a time when dinosaurs roamed the Earth over 100 million years ago. This is the London hammer, and it has become one of the most famous and hotly contested out-of-place artifacts in the world. On the surface, its implication is staggering. If the hammer is as old as the rock that encased it, then it shatters our entire understanding of human history and technological development. It would mean that a tool identical to those used in the 19th century was being wielded by someone or something in the age of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. For some, particularly certain creationist groups, this is precisely the evidence they seek. They argue the London hammer is definitive proof that the standard geological timeline is wrong, and that humans coexisted with dinosaurs, a view they base on certain literal interpretations of ancient texts. The hammer, to them, is not an anomaly but a correction, a piece of hard evidence that modern science has simply buried because it does not fit the established narrative. The artifact seems to offer a simple, dramatic story, a modern object impossibly trapped in ancient stone. But geology offers a different, more nuanced explanation, one that reveals just how deceptive the passage of time can be. The process is called concretion. In certain conditions, minerals dissolved in groundwater can precipitate out and cement surrounding sediments together, forming a hard, rock-like nodule around any object that happens to be present. This object acts as a nucleus. Think of it like a pearl forming around a grain of sand. The concretion grows in layers, binding the sediments into a solid mass that can look identical to the surrounding native rock, even though it formed much, much later. Geologists who have studied the London hammer and its casing point to the specific type of rock. The hammer was found in a creek bed, an area with constant water flow and mineral-rich solutions. They argue the hammer, perhaps lost by a miner or settler in the 1800s, fell into the wet, sandy sediment along the creek. Over the decades, dissolved minerals, particularly limestone, cemented the sand around the wooden handle and iron head, creating a hard, convincing shell. The concretion then weathered out of the softer surrounding stone, making it appear as if the hammer was encased in ancient bedrock. Scientific analysis adds weight to this. While the wooden handle is indeed mineralized, a sign of age, tests on the iron head have shown it to be of a high purity, consistent with 19th century smelting techniques, not primitive ancient forging. Furthermore, the rock casing itself, while hard, is not the solid, homogeneous Cretaceous sandstone it was first claimed to be, but a siliceous limestone concretion that could have formed relatively quickly under the right chemical conditions. So we are left with two competing stories, each rooted in a different way of seeing the world. One sees a miracle that overturns textbooks. The other sees a fascinating but entirely natural geological process that mimics a miracle. The London hammer, therefore, is the perfect specimen of its kind. It forces a confrontation not just between different timelines, but between different methods of inquiry. Do we trust the immediate, shocking appearance of the artifact, or do we trust the slower, less dramatic explanations of chemistry and process? It is a battle between the allure of the singular, mysterious object and the patient, cumulative weight of scientific understanding. The hammer remains locked in its own silent debate, a tool that built nothing but controversy, reminding us that sometimes the most puzzling structures are not buildings, but the stories we choose to build around a single perplexing find. The debate between natural process and human intention finds its purest expression not on land but beneath the waves. Off the southern coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, in clear blue water, a diver in the 1980s encountered a sight that seemed to rewrite history. Rising from the seafloor was not a coral reef but what appeared to be a vast sunken city. The Yonaguni Monument, as it is now known, is a sprawling complex of massive stone terraces, towering pillars, and wide, flat platforms that look eerily like stepped pyramids or the foundations of ancient temples. The most striking feature is a giant, monolithic slab, often called the turtle, that resembles a massive altar or stage. Everywhere you look, the rock is carved with sharp, clean lines. There are perfect right angles where none should exist in nature. There are staircases with equal treads and risers leading from one level to another. There are what seem to be wide, straight roads and drainage channels. On one wall, some see the faint but distinct carving of a human face, while others point to a formation that looks like a crude giant statue. The entire structure is over 160 feet long, 80 feet wide, and rising about 80 feet from the seabed. It feels, in every visceral way, like the ruins of a forgotten civilization, a Pacific Atlantis swallowed by the sea at the end of the last ice age when sea levels rose. The emotional pull is undeniable. You are looking at architecture, but is that what your eyes are truly seeing? This site has ignited a fierce and unresolved scientific debate, a perfect case study in how we interpret the blurred line between nature and artifact. On one side are geologists led by figures like Professor Masaki Kimura, who argues passionately that Yonaguni is man-made. He points to the specific, unnatural features, the twin megaliths that look like trimmed pillars, the star-shaped pool, the perfectly circular holes that could have held wooden posts. He notes the sheer number of right-angled joints and parallel lines in one location, a statistical improbability for random erosion. For him, this is the work of a sophisticated culture, perhaps from the mythical continent of Mu, over 10,000 years ago when this area was above water. The opposing view, held by many mainstream geologists, is that Yonaguni is a spectacular but entirely natural sandstone formation. They explain that the rock here, called mudstone, fractures along natural horizontal and vertical planes due to tectonic stresses. Powerful underwater currents over thousands of years have then eroded and undercut these fractures, creating the stepped, blocky appearance. The right angles are simply the result of the rock splitting along its natural grain. The staircases, a series of these horizontal fractures, eroded at a uniform rate. The carved face, a classic example of pareidolia, the human brain's tendency to see familiar patterns like faces in random shapes. They argue that if you look at similar sandstone formations on land, you see the same sharp geometric features created solely by weathering. So, who is right? The truth may be frustratingly in the middle. The most compelling theory is that Yonaguni began as a natural rock formation, shaped by the immense forces of the earth and sea. But then, perhaps, ancient humans found it. Seeing this magnificent terraced stone rising from the ground, they could have modified it, carving channels to guide water, chiseling steps to make ascents easier, or etching symbols into the most prominent faces. This practice, called terraforming, is known from many ancient cultures who enhanced natural landscapes for ceremonial or practical use. Yonaguni, then, would be a hybrid, a natural wonder that was later adopted and refined by human hands, making it neither purely natural nor entirely built from scratch. This site holds its mystery tightly. It offers no pottery shards, no tools, no inscriptions to provide a clear answer. It is a silent stone Rorschach test lying 60 feet underwater. You can see the ghost of a plaza where ceremonies were held, or you can see a masterpiece of aquatic geology. Its power lies in that very ambiguity, forcing us to confront a fundamental question about our past. When we look at the ancient world, are we seeing the fingerprints of humanity, or are we seeing the profound artistry of time and tide and projecting our own story upon it? The sunken terraces of Yonaguni do not give up their secret. They simply wait in the quiet blue gloom for us to decide what we are looking at. The silent geometry of submerged stone finds a distant echo on a windswept hillside in Scotland. Here lies the Cochno stone, a massive slab of sandstone over 40 feet long, its surface a chaotic yet mesmerizing tapestry of carved art. Etched into the rock over 5,000 years ago are more than 90 intricate symbols, a dense galaxy of spirals, concentric circles, and meandering lines known as cup and ring marks. To the modern eye, it looks like an ancient star chart, a circuit board, or a sacred map of the underworld all at once. The sheer density of the carvings is overwhelming. Some of the rings are perfectly concentric, the grooves carved with a steady, practiced hand. Spirals unwind with hypnotic precision, some double, some triple, connecting to other symbols via carved channels. This is not casual graffiti. This is a deliberate, painstaking, and profoundly mysterious language written in stone, a language whose grammar we have lost. What were these Neolithic farmers, people we often imagine struggling for basic survival, trying to communicate with such elaborate and permanent symbols? The mystery deepens when you realize the Cochno stone is not alone. From Ireland to Portugal, across the highlands of Spain and into the north of England, similar cup and ring marks appear on boulders and outcrops. They are a pan-European phenomenon, a shared visual vocabulary that spanned thousands of miles at a time when travel was an epic, life-risking endeavor. This was not a local fashion, it was a continent-wide tradition. The consistency of the symbols is what feels so out of place. How did the idea of a 5-ringed circle with a central cup or a clockwise spiral transmit across such vast distances and through so many generations with such fidelity? It suggests a shared system of meaning, a sophisticated knowledge network that connected disparate communities. They were communicating something important enough to invest hours of labor into hard stone, something so fundamental it transcended local tribal identities. One of the most compelling theories points to the sky. Archaeoastronomers have studied the Kochno stone and found that certain key carvings align with significant solar and lunar events, like the solstice sunrise or the major lunar standstill. The spirals could map celestial motion. The concentric rings might represent orbits or cycles of time. In this view, the stone becomes a permanent calendar and observatory, a way to anchor the chaotic rhythms of life to the predictable cycles of the heavens. Knowing when to plant, when to harvest, when to hold ceremonies was a matter of survival, and this stone could have been their communal ledger for tracking those celestial deadlines. But the symbolism may run deeper than simple agriculture. The spirals and concentric circles are powerful, almost universal symbols. They appear in trance states, in the structure of galaxies, in the growth pattern of ferns. They could represent the journey of the soul, the cycles of life and death, or the portal to other realms. The central cup, often connected by a carved gutter, might symbolize a point of spiritual entry or libation, where offerings were poured to flow along the sacred pathways. The stone then transforms from a tool into a temple, a permanent interface between the community, the land, and the cosmos. The recent discovery of similar complex patterns across Europe, often in elevated panoramic locations, reinforces this idea of a sacred geography. These were not hidden marks, they were placed prominently, meant to be seen and used. The effort required is itself a statement. Carving these symbols into living rock with stone tools is a slow, grueling act of devotion. Each ring required countless hammer blows with a stone pick. This was a society that chose to invest its surplus energy and skill not in fortifications but in cosmology. They were mapping inner and outer space with equal care. The Kochno stone, therefore, challenges our narrow view of Neolithic life. It forces us to see these early farmers not as primitive strugglers, but as profound philosophers and astronomers, people with a complex symbolic language and a deep desire to understand their place in a vast, interconnected universe. Their legacy is not in grand cities, but in these enigmatic whispers carved in stone, a silent, sprawling conversation across a continent that we are only now beginning to hear. The silent conversations of Neolithic Europe find a startling parallel in the echoing darkness of a Chinese hillside. In 1992, a farmer in Longyu County, Zhejiang Province, decided to pump water out of a small, seemingly bottomless pond on his land. As the water level dropped, he did not find a natural pool, but the entrance to an immense hand-carved cavern. This was not a single cave. It was the first glimpse of an entire underground world, a complex of 24 colossal, man-made caverns carved deep into the solid sandstone. Stepping inside is like entering the hollowed-out foundation of a cathedral built for giants. The scale is almost impossible to process. The ceilings soar over 30 meters high, nearly 100 feet, and the caverns span thousands of square meters each. Archaeologists estimate that to create this complex, ancient workers removed nearly 1 million cubic meters of stone. That is a volume of rock equivalent to building 2 of the Great Pyramid of Giza from scratch, but here the work was subtractive. They were not piling stone up, they were carving a mountain out from within. The sheer mass of excavated material is only the first layer of the mystery. Where did all that rock go? There are no massive spoil heaps nearby, no mountains of rubble that would logically accompany such a titanic mining operation. The stone simply vanished, as if it was carried away and used for some other unknown purpose, leaving no trace in the local landscape or historical records. This absence is deafening. No document, no local legend, no folk tale from any dynasty in China's meticulously recorded history mentions the construction of the Longyu caves. They appear in no imperial ledger, no poet's verse, no map. It is as if a civilization secretly carved out a mountain and then collectively agreed to forget it ever happened. The silence of history is broken only by the caves themselves, and what they reveal is even more perplexing. This is not a haphazard network of tunnels. Every cavern is a masterpiece of precision engineering. The walls, ceiling, and supporting pillars are all covered in a uniform pattern of parallel chisel marks, each groove running in a consistent, rhythmic band across vast expanses of stone. These are not the rough pick marks of quarrymen. They are decorative, a deliberate aesthetic choice applied with machine-like consistency across millions of square feet of surface area. The effect is a stunning, textured uniformity that makes the entire complex feel designed as a single, cohesive unit. Then there are the pillars. They are not natural formations left behind to hold up the roof. They are architectural elements carved from the living rock in perfect symmetry with the caverns they support. Their placement is strategic, their proportions balanced, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of load distribution and structural integrity. The builders knew exactly how much stone they could remove and where they needed to leave supports to prevent a catastrophic collapse, all calculated without modern geology or engineering software. How did they achieve such symmetry and scale in near-total darkness? The alignment of the caves, their consistent angles and sheer wall faces, suggests they used an advanced system of measurement and transfer. They might have employed a system of plumb lines and water levels, projecting their design from a master plan onto the cavern walls as they advanced, inch by agonizing inch. The work would have been a symphony of coordinated labor. Teams of workers, illuminated by flickering oil lamps, would have had to precisely choreograph their cutting, following the guidelines while others removed the debris, all in a confined, echoing, and dangerous environment. The logistics of feeding, housing, and organizing a workforce large enough to accomplish this over what must have been generations is a managerial feat that rivals the physical one. Yet for all this staggering effort, the purpose of the Longyou caves remains utterly opaque. They show no signs of habitation, no hearths, no garbage middens. They were not tombs, as no burials or grave goods have been found. They lack the religious iconography of temples or the defensive features of a bunker. Some have speculated they were imperial quarries, but the decorative chiseling makes no sense for a purely industrial site. Others suggest they were secret storage facilities or even ceremonial spaces, but again, the evidence is absent. They are vast, beautiful, and completely empty. This profound emptiness is what makes them so haunting. The Longyou caves are a negative space, a monument defined by what was taken away. They represent an investment of labor and genius so vast it defies belief, directed toward a goal we cannot begin to comprehend. They stand as a silent testament to a project so important it consumed a mountain, and yet so secret or so misunderstood that it left not a single word in the annals of history, only the echo of a million chisel strokes in the dark. But a silent, empty space can be just as powerful as a carved one, especially when its purpose was to frame the sky. In a quiet field in Germany, a pattern emerged from the earth that revealed a mind looking upward with startling intent. This is the Gosek Circle, a Neolithic monument constructed around 4,900 years before the Common Era, a full 2 millennia before Stonehenge's first stones were set. Discovered from aerial surveys in the 1990s, it appears at first as a series of faint, circular discolorations in a wheat field. Excavation revealed its true form, a perfectly circular enclosure over 75 meters across, defined by 3 concentric rings, an inner ditch, an earthen bank, and an outer ditch. Within these rings stood a formidable wooden palisade, a wall of closely set oak posts with 3 gates set at precise points. This was not a defensive structure or a village. It was a machine built to capture the sun. The genius of Gosek lies in its brutal, geometric simplicity. The 3 gates are not placed randomly. 2 align perfectly with the sunrise and sunset on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. The third gate marks the summer solstice sunrise. On the morning of the winter solstice, if you stood at the center of the circle, you would see the sun rise directly through the southeastern gate. Its rays would travel across the enclosure, marking a sacred path of light. As the day ended, the sun would set precisely framed by the southwestern gate. This was a calendar carved into the landscape, a colossal instrument that used the horizon as its scale and the sun as its moving hand. The implications are profound. The people who built Gosek were early farmers of the stroke-ornamented ware culture. Their lives were tied to the seasons, to the planting and the harvest. Their survival depended on predicting the sun's retreat and return. Gosek Circle provided that prediction with Stone Age certainty. It transformed an astronomical event, something vast and seemingly untouchable, into a local communal experience. The entire village could gather inside the wooden walls and witness the universe keeping its promise as the sun slid perfectly into the slot prepared for it. This required a sophisticated, accumulated knowledge. To build Gosek, its architects needed to observe the solar cycle for generations, noting the exact points on the horizon where the sun rose at its extreme northern and southern limits. They then had to transfer that knowledge onto the ground, surveying a perfect circle and aligning its gates with an accuracy that rivals many later monuments. They understood basic geometry and possessed a standardized unit of measurement, likely based on the human stride or a specific rod, to maintain the circle's perfect proportions. This is not the work of superstitious primitives. It is the work of pragmatic astronomer farmers, the world's first physicists, who sought to quantify the cosmos in wood and earth. What makes Gosek feel so out of its era is the clarity of its purpose. It has no burial mounds, no grand carvings, no evidence of habitation. It is pure function, a scientific instrument built 500 years before the first metal tools arrived in the region. It stands as a testament to a type of intelligence we rarely attribute to Neolithic Europe, a systematic, observational, and mathematical intelligence. They were not just marking the solstice, they were institutionalizing it, building a permanent laboratory to verify the laws of the heavens. The Gosek Circle does not whisper of lost gods or alien contact. It speaks in the clear, confident language of empirical knowledge. It tells us that 7,000 years ago, in the heart of a German forest, humanity was already measuring the sky, not with telescopes but with posts and ditches, laying the foundation for all the astronomy that would follow. It is a humble, earthen structure that contains a universe of understanding, a silent ring that proved the cosmos could be known. From the earthen calendars of Europe, we travel to the dusty shelves of a museum in Baghdad, where a cluster of unassuming clay jars holds a spark of modern controversy. These are the so-called Baghdad batteries, artifacts discovered in the 1930s at a 2,000-year-old Parthian site. Each jar is about the size of a fist, sealed with an asphalt stopper. Through that stopper runs an iron rod surrounded by a rolled copper cylinder. The arrangement is suspiciously familiar to anyone who has seen a basic school science experiment. If you filled such a jar with an acidic liquid like vinegar or fermented grape juice, you would create a chemical reaction. The acidic electrolyte would allow electrons to flow between the iron and the copper, generating a small but measurable electric current. In the 1940s, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig, who first studied them, proposed exactly that. He suggested these jars were ancient galvanic cells, primitive batteries. To test the idea, modern researchers built precise replicas. When filled with an electrolyte like vinegar, the jars did indeed produce a voltage around 1.5 to 2 volts, roughly the same as a modern A battery. While the power output is low, connecting several of these cells in series could, in theory, produce a more useful voltage. This is where the tantalizing what-if takes hold. What could a 2,000-year-old civilization have done with a trickle of electricity? The most popular theory is electroplating, the process of using electricity to coat a base metal with a thin layer of a more precious one, like gold. There are examples of fine Parthian and later Sasanian artifacts that appear to be gold-plated, and while traditional mercury gilding was known, a simple electroplating method using these cells is a plausible, if unproven, alternative. Imagine a craftsman in a Mesopotamian workshop using a series of these clay pots to gently deposit a shimmer of gold onto a silver statuette. It is a compelling image that would rewrite a chapter in the history of technology. However, the mainstream archaeological view offers a far more mundane and likely explanation. Most scholars argue these jars were simply storage vessels for sacred scrolls. The copper cylinder would have held a scroll made of perishable material like papyrus or parchment, with the iron rod acting as a sturdy core. The asphalt seal would have protected the contents from moisture and insects. This interpretation fits neatly with other finds from the region and the practical needs of the time. After all, if they were batteries, where are the wires? Where is any evidence of their use in a circuit? No metal objects have been found with plating that definitively requires an electrochemical process, and no other components of an electrical system have been discovered alongside the jars. The debate, therefore, is a perfect clash of perspectives. One side sees a brilliant, anomalous invention, a spark of modernity flickering in the ancient dark. The other sees a sensible storage container, its resemblance to a battery a mere coincidence of materials. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility lies not in choosing one over the other, but in wondering about accidental discovery. Could a scribe storing a scroll in such a jar with some acidic condensate have felt a strange tingle when touching both the iron and copper? Might that mysterious sensation have been noted, even if its cause remained a mystery, a sacred secret of the priests? The Baghdad batteries sit in that frustrating and fascinating space between proof and possibility. They are not powerful enough to light a room, but they are more than capable of igniting the imagination, a quiet reminder that the ancient world may have held secrets not of lost power grids, but of fleeting, stumbled-upon truths that were never fully understood, even by those who held them in their hands. But a trickle of electricity is a subtle force compared to the sheer, overwhelming presence of stone. In the misty fields of Brittany, France, a different kind of power lies arranged in silent, regimented lines. The Karnak stones are not a circle or a solitary monument, they are an army. Over 3,000 weathered megaliths stand in eerie, parallel rows that stretch for miles across the landscape, the largest collection of standing stones in the world. To walk among them is to feel time itself has been marshaled into formation. These are not randomly placed boulders. The stones are organized with clear, almost military precision into three major alignments: Manek, Kermario, and Kaleskan, each a grand avenue of granite sentinels, some towering over 4 meters tall. They march across the gentle hills in ranks that were once perfectly straight, a geometric imposition on the natural world that feels both alien and intentional. The scale of the labor is numbing. Each of these menhirs, some weighing tens of tons, was quarried, transported, and erected by Neolithic farmers over 6,000 years ago, centuries before the Great Pyramid was a dream in the desert. The collective effort represents a societal commitment so vast it defies easy explanation. Why would a community, presumably focused on survival, dedicate generations to planting a forest of stone? The most persistent theory looks to the sky, suggesting the alignments form a colossal astronomical computer. Researchers have noted that the rows are not laid out on a true north-south axis, but are deliberately skewed. Some propose that specific sightlines through the stones frame the rising and setting of the sun and moon at key points in their cycles, particularly the solstices. The entire complex could have been a sophisticated calendar, a permanent observatory where priests or elders could track the passage of seasons, predict eclipses, and mark sacred times for planting and ceremony. The landscape itself becomes the instrument, with the stones acting as fixed sighting points against the horizon. This implies a deep, accumulated knowledge of celestial mechanics, a science passed down and refined over centuries, all encoded in the placement of granite. Yet, astronomy is not the only language spoken here. Another compelling idea sees the alignments as a sacred processional path. The long, straight avenues might have guided ritual walks for pilgrims during major festivals, a physical journey that mirrored a spiritual one, with the towering stones channeling energy or marking stages of initiation. Some local legends even speak of the rows as a Roman army turned to stone by a Christian saint, a folk memory that captures their awe-inspiring, regimented presence. The true purpose may forever hover between the practical and the profound. What is undeniable is the sophistication of the planning. To lay out such extensive, parallel lines across uneven terrain required advanced surveying skills and a shared unit of measurement. The builders had to envision the final form on a scale they could never see from the ground, coordinating teams across a vast area to maintain alignment. This speaks of a social hierarchy with architects and overseers, a culture capable of long-term projects that would not see completion in a single lifetime. The Karnak stones, therefore, are a paradox. They are the work of a Neolithic society, yet their scale, precision, and implied knowledge feel like the product of a much later, more centralized civilization. They stand not as a temple with a roof, but as an open-air cathedral of geometry and cosmos, a silent testament to a time when humanity sought to order the universe one heavy, enduring stone at a time. The silent stones of Karnak speak of a culture measuring the heavens, but on the sun-scorched plateau of the Sahara, a different kind of record was kept, one painted in vivid color on sheltered cave walls. The Tassili Ennager in Algeria is a vast lunar landscape of eroded sandstone, a stone forest hiding a secret gallery of human history. Within these natural rock shelters are over 15,000 individual paintings and engravings, a sprawling chronicle that spans thousands of years, from before the desert was a desert to a time when it was a green savanna teeming with life. The scenes are a breathtaking archive of a lost world. Herds of giraffe and elephant, scenes of hunting and ritual, and the daily life of a people long vanished. Yet, scattered among these familiar images are figures that stop the heart, paintings that feel violently out of place in their prehistoric context. The most famous are the so-called round head paintings. These are large humanoid figures, but they are utterly alien. Their bodies are often featureless, but their heads are dominated by enormous, perfect circles. Inside these circles, where a face should be, there is sometimes just a simple line or two, suggesting eyes or a single vertical mark. The effect is uncanny. To the modern eye, they look less like people and more like entities wearing large spherical helmets, the kind a deep sea diver or an astronaut might wear. Their limbs are sometimes depicted with a strange, stiff posture, and they are often shown floating or in postures of weightlessness. One particularly striking figure, known as the Great Martian God, looms over a scene, its massive round head and simplistic features radiating an otherworldly authority. These are not the only anomalous images. Other paintings appear to show beings with antennae or figures surrounded by radiating lines that could be interpreted as energy fields or beams of light. There are scenes that some have passionately argued depict rocket-like objects or craft hovering in the sky. When you stand before these images, painted with ochre and charcoal by artists millennia ago, the immediate, visceral question is unavoidable. What were they looking at? Did the artists of Tassili Ennager witness something extraordinary, something so outside their understanding that they could only render it in these strange, symbolic forms? The theory of ancient astronauts or prehistoric contact is a seductive one, offering a simple, dramatic answer to a profound mystery. It suggests that these paintings are not imagination, but documentation, a literal record of encounters with advanced beings or technology. Proponents point to the precision of the round heads, so consistently different from the detailed human and animal figures elsewhere, as evidence of a separate, real phenomenon. They argue that the shamanic explanation is a convenient way for mainstream archaeology to dismiss what it cannot explain. However, the dominant interpretation from archaeologists and anthropologists takes us in a radically different, yet equally fascinating direction. They see these paintings not as portraits of visitors, but as windows into the spiritual world of the artists. In this view, the round heads are profound shamanic imagery. The large circular head could represent an altered state of consciousness, the expanded perception achieved through ritual, trance, or the use of psychoactive plants. The simplified features might indicate that the figure is not an individual, but a spirit, a deity, or the shaman's own soul journeying outside the body. The feeling of weightlessness and the radiating lines could depict spiritual energy, the sensation of flight, or connection to celestial forces. These paintings, then, are not records of physical events, but maps of inner space, attempts to visualize the invisible realms of myth and spirit that were as real to these people as the animals they hunted. The context supports this. Tassili Enaja is not a random spot. Its dramatic, isolated rock formations would have been a natural temple, a place set apart for ceremony and vision quests. The paintings are layered over generations, suggesting this was a sacred site where the cosmology of the culture was continually reinforced and reimagined on the stone canvas. So we are left with two irreconcilable narratives, both trying to explain the same haunting images. One looks outward to the sky and sees a possible encounter. The other looks inward to the human mind and spirit and sees the universal language of transcendence. Perhaps the true power of the Tassili Enaja paintings lies in their ability to hold both possibilities in tension. They force us to confront the limits of our own interpretation. Is our modern, technology-saturated mind so conditioned that we can only see a diving suit where an ancient shaman saw the face of a god? Or does the persistent, global recurrence of such similar visitor motifs point to a deeper, shared experience in the human story, one we have yet to fully comprehend? The paintings offer no answers, only their silent, vivid testimony. A gallery of mysteries painted in a green Sahara that vanished, leaving its greatest questions preserved in a sea of stone. A gallery of mysteries painted in a vanished green Sahara gives way to a mountain transformed by faith. In the heart of Maharashtra, India, the Kailasa temple at Ellora does not rise from the earth. It emerges as if the rock itself had a dream of divinity and chose to shed its excess to reveal it. This is not architecture in the traditional sense. It is the world's most ambitious act of sculptural subtraction. Imagine a cliff face, a solid expanse of volcanic basalt, and within it, the vision of an entire temple complex, courtyards, multi-story pillars, a central shrine, and ornate galleries, all locked inside the stone. The builders of the 8th century did not add a single brick. Instead, they removed over 200,000 tons of rock, carving downward from the top of the cliff to liberate a freestanding monument from the living mountainside. The scale of removal is staggering, more than twice the volume of the Great Pyramid stone. But here, the removed material was not used to build up, it was simply carried away, leaving a negative space of breathtaking complexity. The precision required for such a project is what defies its era. This was not a slow accretion of parts where mistakes could be hidden or corrected. This was a single, irreversible act of revelation. Master architects had to visualize the final, complete temple in 3 dimensions, and then instruct thousands of workers to carve from the top down, knowing that one misjudged cut too deep could ruin an entire pillar or collapse a planned ceiling. They worked like sculptors on a colossal scale, but with the added terror that their medium was not clay but a mountain, and their chisels were simple hammers and chisels of iron. The result is a monument that feels both impossibly ancient and eerily modern in its conception. You walk through a gargantuan gateway into a courtyard that is not built but dug out, with walls that soar over 100 feet high on either side. These walls are not plain. They are adorned with intricate friezes and colossal sculptures of deities and mythical beasts, all carved in situ from the same continuous rock. You pass between multi-storied galleries, their pillars and arches not assembled but revealed, as if the stone had always been arranged that way, waiting for the excess to be peeled back. At the heart of it all stands the main shrine, a towering structure meant to represent Mount Kailash, the abode of the god Shiva. It is all one piece, a testament to a vision so clear and a faith so powerful that it could command a mountain to become a temple. The logistical genius is humbling. The removal of 200,000 tons of basalt using only hand tools would have required a workforce of thousands, laboring for generations under the relentless sun. The planning would have needed a system of measurement and transfer that allowed the surface teams to communicate exact depths and dimensions to the workers below, a three-dimensional puzzle executed with no blueprints we would recognize. To stand within the Kailasa temple is to experience a profound inversion of logic. Every instinct tells you this structure was built upward, yet the evidence of the cliff walls surrounding you proves it was carved downward. It is a place where the very idea of construction is turned inside out, a monument that proclaims that true creation sometimes means having the courage to remove everything that is not essential until only the sacred form remains. This act of carving a mountain into a temple finds a strange, smaller echo on the other side of the world, not in a sacred complex, but in a solitary, round stone tower in a quiet park in Newport, Rhode Island. The Newport Tower stands alone, a cylindrical structure of rough fieldstone, rising 28 feet into the air. It is not particularly large or ornate, but its simple, mysterious presence has ignited a historical debate that has raged for over a century. Its architecture is the first clue that something is off. It does not look like colonial American construction. The tower is supported by 8 round columns, creating a series of arches that form an open ground floor. Above, the cylindrical wall continues, pierced by several windows and a fireplace, before culminating in a now missing conical roof. This design, with its arches and central supporting pillar, bears a striking resemblance to medieval European structures. Some see the ghost of a round church, like those built by the Knights Templar. Others note its similarity to a stone windmill or a defensive watchtower from the 15th or 16th century. It feels like a piece of old Europe was carefully lifted and dropped into the New England landscape a century or more out of time. The official textbook history is clear. The tower is listed as a 17th century stone windmill built by Benedict Arnold, the early colonial governor of Rhode Island, and not the famous traitor. Proponents of this view point to colonial records that mention a mill, and they argue the architecture, while unusual, is within the capabilities of early settlers who might have been emulating designs from their homeland. It was a practical structure, they say, nothing more, but the tower itself seems to argue against this tidy explanation. The construction is massive and permanent, using a mortar that analysis shows contains a shell aggregate, a technique common in medieval Europe but not typical of early colonial building. The alignment of its windows and fireplace has been studied for astronomical significance, with some researchers claiming they frame solstice sunrises and important stars as they would have appeared in the 1400s, not the 1600s. This has fueled the passionate alternative theory that the Newport Tower is evidence of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact, standing long before Columbus or even the Vikings of Eland's Ox Meadows. The candidates for its builders are a who's who of historical speculation. Could it be a Norse church built by Vikings venturing south from their settlements in Newfoundland? Could it be a secret outpost constructed by the Knights Templar, fleeing persecution in Europe and bringing their distinct architectural style to the New World? Or perhaps it was built by Portuguese explorers like Miguel Corte Real, who vanished in the North Atlantic in the early 1500s. Each theory points to stylistic parallels in the Old World and tantalizing, fragmentary evidence, like the alleged discovery of a Portuguese coin near the site. Yet, for every piece of circumstantial evidence, there is a counter-argument from mainstream historians. The tower's stubborn mystery lies in this perfect stalemate. It is too sophisticated to be easily dismissed as a colonial barn, yet not accompanied by the definitive proof, like a runestone inscription or contemporaneous European record that would cement its pre-colonial origin. It exists in a historical limbo, a structure that feels profoundly out of place in the standard narrative of American history. To stand beneath its arches is to stand beneath a question made of stone. It asks us whether the story we know is complete, or if there were other, earlier chapters written on this coast, their authors leaving only this enigmatic round tower as their signature, a silent sentinel waiting for its time to be recognized. A round tower in Rhode Island stands as a question of origins, but in the heart of Europe, an entire landscape has been reimagined as the greatest archaeological discovery of all time. Near the town of Visoko in Bosnia and Herzegovina, a series of forested hills rise from the valley in stark geometric forms. To most geologists, they are exactly that: hills, natural formations shaped by millions of years of tectonic uplift and erosion. But to a controversial group of researchers led by businessman Semir Osmanagic, these are not hills at all. They are the Bosnian pyramids, a complex of ancient, man-made structures claimed to be the oldest and largest pyramids on Earth, dwarfing even Giza. This claim, which emerged in the early 2000s, has ignited a firestorm that perfectly encapsulates the modern collision between passionate amateur investigation and the rigid protocols of established science. The evidence presented by proponents is a list of tantalizing anomalies. They point to the shape of the largest hill, known as the Pyramid of the Sun. Its four faces appear to align almost perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, a precision that seems unlikely for a random landform. The slopes are composed of what look like massive, rectangular stone blocks, fitted together with a concrete-like binding material. Excavations have revealed paved terraces and what are described as man-made sandstone slabs. Below the hills, a vast network of underground tunnels, named the Ravni Tunnels, has been explored, featuring dry stone walls, alleged energy phenomena, and mysterious, smooth monoliths. For those who believe the narrative is irresistible, they argue that a lost, advanced civilization over 12,000 years ago engineered these colossal earthworks for unknown purposes, possibly involving energy harnessing or astronomical alignment. The scale is presented as proof, with the Pyramid of the Sun said to be 220 meters high, far taller than the Great Pyramid. The story offers everything a mystery seeker could want: hidden knowledge, a rewriting of history, and a tangible, walkable site that feels like an adventure. Yet, the response from the global archaeological and geological community has been nearly unanimous and devastatingly dismissive. Teams from the European Association of Archaeologists and numerous universities have investigated and published scathing rebuttals. Their conclusions are clear. The hills are natural, a common geological feature known as flatirons, formed by the erosion of sedimentary layers that create those crisp triangular faces. The so-called concrete blocks are actually a type of sedimentary conglomerate rock that naturally fractures into rectangular shapes, a phenomenon seen worldwide. The cardinal alignments are not precise upon professional surveying, and even if they were, such symmetry can and does occur in nature. The underground tunnels are likely medieval mine shafts or natural karst features later modified. The scientific consensus is that there is no credible evidence whatsoever for a man-made pyramid complex. This stark divide makes the Bosnian pyramids the ultimate modern case study in our search for structures out of time. It is not a mystery of the ancient world, but a mystery of human perception and desire. It shows how easily the human mind, especially one yearning for lost grandeur, can impose order on chaos, seeing intentional design in the magnificent randomness of geology. The controversy forces a critical question. Are we uncovering hidden truths that institutional science is too rigid to accept, or are we projecting our own myths onto the innocent landscape, driven by a deep need for our past to be more extraordinary than it perhaps was? The hills near Visoko stand silent as they have for millions of years. They do not care if we call them pyramids or not. Their true lesson may be about us, a reflection of our timeless longing to find meaning, pattern, and wonder in the stones of the world, whether placed there by human hands or by the slow, patient artistry of the earth itself. Our journey across continents and millennia has taken us from pyramids aligned to stars with impossible precision to a single, rust-defying pillar of iron. We have seen underground cities carved for 20,000 people and a solitary man who moved 1,000 tons of coral rock by himself. We have encountered perfect stone spheres whose meaning is lost, a gear-driven computer from the ancient sea, and hills that may be natural wonders or the world's oldest pyramids. Each of these 25 structures stands as a rupture in the timeline, a place where the story we think we know about the past cracks open, revealing glimpses of something stranger. They are not mistakes, they are evidence of forgotten knowledge, of skills that vanished, of societies whose capabilities we have consistently underestimated. What do they tell us collectively? They tell us that human history is not a smooth, upward slope from primitive to advanced. It is more like a spiral or a tapestry with missing threads. Technologies appear, peak, and are lost. Civilizations achieve staggering feats and then fade, leaving only their most durable puzzles behind. The Great Pyramid and Puma Punku suggest a mastery of stone that feels industrial. The Antikythera mechanism implies a road not taken, where the ancient world was on the cusp of a mechanical revolution that never came. Göbekli Tepe turns the very origin of civilization on its head, arguing that the temple may have come before the farm. These are not just cool mysteries, they are profound corrections. They humble us, they remind us that our current understanding is a work in progress, a sketch that is constantly being redrawn with each new discovery. The drive to build, to carve meaning into the world, to reach for the stars or dig deep for safety, this is the timeless thread that connects all these builders. Whether it was the Neolithic astronomers of Karnak laying out their stone army or Ed Leedskalnin wrestling with his enigmatic castle, the impulse is the same, to leave a mark that says we were here and we understood something about this world. So, what is the most baffling structure of all? That is a question only you can answer. Does the perfect, silent geometry of the Longyu caves haunt you, or is it the visceral, otherworldly art of Tassili Anaja? Perhaps it is the humble Baghdad battery, a spark of possibility in a clay jar. History is a conversation, and your voice is part of it. We want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell us which of these 25 anomalies challenges your view of the past the most, or share another out-of-place artifact that we did not cover. The search for these lost chapters is never over, and the next great mystery might be waiting just beneath the surface in a forgotten field or a dusty museum drawer. If you want to join us for more journeys into the heart of historical enigmas, be sure to subscribe.